The mornings always began the same way. Before the sun fully rose, he was already awake, sitting on the edge of a narrow bed in a small rented room. The walls were plain, the air quiet, and the world outside moved on without noticing him. He would sit there for a moment, gathering strength, because every day felt heavier than the one before. Life had slowly trained him not to expect much. He worked a job that never felt like it belonged to him. The hours were long, the pay barely enough, and the appreciation almost non-existent. People passed him every day without making eye contact. To most, he was just another face in the crowd, another person trying to survive. No one knew how many dreams he carried quietly or how many times he had pushed them aside to keep going. Music had been part of his life for as long as he could remember. Not in a big or glamorous way, but in small moments. As a child, he would tap rhythms on tables, hum melodies while doing chores, and listen closely to songs on old radios. Music made him feel understood when nothing else did. But as life became harder, music slowly moved to the background. Responsibilities came first. Survival came first. Years passed like this. He grew older not in age alone but in weariness. Dreams felt childish when bills were waiting. There were times he thought about giving up music completely, selling the instrument he kept hidden under his bed. But something always stopped him. Maybe it was fear of losing the last piece of himself, or maybe it was hope refusing to die. At night, after long days, he would take the instrument out carefully, as if it were fragile. The room would fill with soft sounds, never loud enough to disturb anyone. These moments were his escape. In those few minutes, he was not tired, not ignored, not struggling. He was simply himself. The music carried his emotions, his pain, and his quiet strength. He never told anyone about this side of his life. Not because he was ashamed, but because experience had taught him that people rarely listen unless success is already visible. He had tried once long ago to share his passion. The response was polite but empty. Since then, he kept his music to himself. Outside, the city was always moving fast. People chased bigger dreams, louder dreams. Compared to them, his felt small and unrealistic. Yet, deep down, he believed music was not meant to make him famous or rich. It was meant to give his life meaning. Still, meaning alone did not pay rent. Some days were especially hard. There were moments when frustration would rise, when he wondered why life felt so unfair. He saw others getting chances, opportunities, support. He wondered if talent really mattered, or if timing and luck decided everything. On those days, music felt like both comfort and reminder of what he was missing. He often stood near street corners where performers played for small crowds. He watched quietly from a distance, not judging, not comparing, just imagining. He imagined standing there, letting people hear what he carried inside. But imagination was safe. Reality required courage, and courage had a cost. One evening, something different happened. While walking home, he noticed a small poster on a community board. It announced a local event, nothing big, just a gathering where people could perform. The words were simple, but they stayed with him. Performers welcome. Limited time. All styles accepted. He read it again and again. His heart beat faster, not with excitement, but with fear. This was not a promise, just a possibility. Still, it felt like the universe whispering instead of shouting. He walked away, telling himself not to think about it. But the idea followed him home. That night, the music he played sounded different. It was fuller, more emotional, almost restless. He imagined an audience, imagined being heard without explaining himself. The thought scared him, but it also woke something inside him that had been asleep for too long. The next few days were a battle inside his mind. One voice told him to stay quiet, to stay safe. Another reminded him that life would not change if he did nothing. He knew rejection well. He lived with it daily. But regret felt heavier than rejection. He began practicing more seriously, waking up earlier and sleeping later. Not because he believed success was guaranteed, but because preparation gave him control. Each note felt like a conversation with himself. Was he good enough? Did it even matter? The closer the event came, the more doubt crept in. He imagined people laughing, ignoring him, telling him to leave. He imagined failing publicly. Yet, even in those fears there was a strange calm. At least he would try. At least he would know. On the morning of the event, he almost didn't go. He stood by the door, heart pounding, hands cold. The instrument felt heavier than usual. He took a deep breath and reminded himself why he started. Not for applause, not for recognition, but for honesty. As he stepped outside, the world looked the same, but he felt different. This was not a big step for others, but for him it was everything. He didn't know what would happen next. He only knew that silence had ruled his life long enough. That day marked the end of waiting and the beginning of something uncertain. He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing a moment where his voice could exist freely. All he wanted was a single opportunity. Just one chance to be heard. The days leading up to the event moved slowly, but his thoughts moved too fast. Every small moment was filled with questions. While working, his hands followed routine tasks, but his mind stayed somewhere else. He replayed melodies in his head, adjusted rhythms, imagined how it might feel to finally stand in front of people. Even when surrounded by noise, he felt alone with his thoughts. He tried not to tell anyone about the event. Speaking it out loud felt risky, like it could break something fragile. If no one knew, then failure would stay quiet too. Still, there were moments when he almost shared it, when he wanted someone to say, "You can do this." But he had learned not to expect encouragement. At night, practice became more intense. He no longer played only for comfort. Now he played with purpose. His fingers ached, his voice grew tired, but he kept going. Every mistake felt personal, every improvement felt small but important. He wasn't chasing perfection. He just wanted honesty in his sound. There were moments when doubt hit him hard. He would stop playing suddenly, staring at the wall, wondering if he was wasting time. He reminded himself of past disappointments. People who promised help but never returned calls. Opportunities that almost happened but disappeared without explanation. Those memories tried to pull him back into silence. One evening, while walking home, he passed the same place where street performers often gathered. This time, fewer people were around. One performer struggled to keep attention, playing to a nearly empty sidewalk. Instead of feeling discouraged, he felt connected. He realized how brave it was to perform at all, even without applause. That thought stayed with him. The day before the event arrived quietly. No celebration, no sign from the world that something important was about to happen. He went through his routine like always, but inside, everything felt fragile. He checked his instrument again and again, as if something might change if he wasn't careful. That night, sleep came slowly. He lay awake listening to distant sounds from outside. Cars passing, voices fading. The city never rested, but his mind refused to settle. He imagined walking into the venue. He imagined being told there was no space for him. He imagined being ignored. Each thought hurt, but he didn't push them away. He faced them. Morning came earlier than expected. His body felt heavy, but his mind was clear. He moved carefully, almost quietly, as if the day itself might hear his nerves. After getting ready, he sat down with his instrument one last time. He didn't play much, just enough to remind himself why this mattered. The venue wasn't far, but the walk felt long. Every step came with doubt. He almost turned back more than once. What stopped him wasn't confidence. It was the thought that if he didn't go, this chance would disappear forever. When he arrived, the place looked smaller than he imagined. People were already there, talking, laughing, preparing. Some carried expensive equipment. Some moved with confidence like they belonged. He stood near the entrance, feeling out of place, holding onto his instrument tightly. He waited quietly, watching others sign up. Each time someone stepped forward, his heart beat faster. Time felt strange, too fast and too slow at the same time. When his turn came, his voice almost failed him. He cleared his throat and asked politely if he could perform. The response was not harsh, but it wasn't warm either. He was told there were many performers already. Time was limited. He understood. He nodded, ready to step back. But something inside him refused to let go so easily. He spoke again, more softly this time. He said he only needed a short moment. Just one opportunity. He didn't explain his past or his struggles. He didn't beg. He simply asked. There was a pause. People exchanged looks. He felt exposed, like everyone could see his fear. In that silence, he questioned everything. Was this foolish? Was he asking for too much? Finally, he was told he could perform briefly if time allowed. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't encouragement. But it was not a rejection either. It was enough. He stepped aside, heart racing. His hands shook slightly. He tried to calm himself by focusing on his breathing. Around him, others practiced confidently. Some laughed. Some adjusted equipment. He felt invisible again. But this time, invisibility didn't stop him. As he waited, memories flooded in. Late nights practicing alone. Quiet sacrifices. The belief he carried even when no one else did. He realized that this moment wasn't about proving anything to others. It was about honoring himself. When someone finally signaled for him to get ready, fear and calm arrived together. He didn't know how the audience would react. He didn't know if anyone would care. But he knew he would play honestly. Standing near the stage, he felt smaller than ever, yet stronger too. This was the moment he had asked for. One chance. One opportunity. Whatever happened next, at least he had stepped forward. As he prepared to walk into the light, the noise around him faded. The world seemed to pause, holding its breath. And for the first time in a long while, he did the same. When he finally stepped forward, the light felt brighter than he expected. It wasn't blinding, but it made him feel exposed, like every thought inside him could be seen. The sounds of the room softened into a low blur. People were still there, still watching, but in that moment, it felt like he stood alone. He adjusted his grip on the instrument, taking a slow breath. His hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of everything that led him here. This was not just a performance. It was years of quiet effort, hidden practice, and ignored hope coming to the surface all at once. At first, he hesitated. The silence stretched longer than he wanted. A few people shifted in their seats. Someone coughed. Doubt crept in, whispering that this was a mistake. But then he remembered the nights when music was the only thing that kept him steady. He closed his eyes for a brief second and began. The first notes were soft, almost careful. They didn't demand attention. They invited it. The sound carried a gentle honesty, like someone speaking truth without raising their voice. A few people looked up, surprised by the calm that settled over the room. As he continued, the music grew fuller. His hands stopped shaking. His breathing slowed. He wasn't thinking about technique or judgment anymore. He was remembering moments. Long walks home, quiet rooms, missed chances. The music held all of it, shaping feelings into sound. The room slowly changed. Conversations faded. Phones were lowered. People who had planned to leave stayed where they were. Something about the music felt real, unpolished, and deeply human. It didn't try to impress. It tried to connect. He felt it too. A strange calm replaced his fear. This was where he belonged, even if only for these few minutes. Every note felt like a release, like he was finally speaking after years of silence. There were imperfections. A note slightly off. A pause that lasted a moment too long. But instead of breaking the moment, these small flaws made it more honest. The music sounded lived in, shaped by real experience rather than practice alone. As the melody continued, emotions moved through the room. Some listeners leaned forward without realizing it. Others closed their eyes. No one was smiling loudly or clapping yet. This wasn't that kind of moment. It was quieter, deeper. He reached a part of the piece that always felt hardest. In the past, he often struggled there. But this time, he didn't fight it. He let the emotion guide him. The sound softened, then rose again, carrying a sense of longing and hope at the same time. For a brief moment, he forgot where he was. The stage disappeared. The audience faded. There was only the music and the feeling behind it. This was the space he had always searched for, the place where effort and truth met. When the final notes began to fade, he opened his eyes. The room was completely still. No movement. No sound. His heart pounded as he waited, unsure what the silence meant. Then, slowly, someone began to clap. Not loudly, not for show, but with sincerity. Another joined. Then another. The sound grew, filling the space with warmth rather than noise. He lowered his instrument, unsure how to react. He wasn't used to being seen like this. Applause had never been part of his life. He gave a small nod, more to himself than to the audience. What mattered most wasn't the clapping. It was the look on people's faces. Respect, surprise, understanding. They hadn't expected this, and neither had he. As he stepped back, his legs felt weak, but his chest felt light. For the first time in years, he felt heard. Not praised, not celebrated, but understood. That feeling stayed with him as the next performer took the stage. He moved to the side, watching from a distance. The world felt different now, even though nothing had physically changed. The same room, the same people. But inside him, something had shifted. People passed by him, some offering quiet words, some simple nods. No long speeches, no promises, just acknowledgement. And that was more than he had expected. He didn't know what would come next. No one had told him anything. There were no contracts or clear paths ahead. But he didn't feel anxious about that anymore. What mattered was that he had done it. He had stepped into the light, faced the fear, and shared his truth. The single opportunity he asked for had not changed the world around him yet. But it had changed him. As he left the stage area, the noise of the room slowly returned. Life moved on as it always did. But deep inside, he knew this moment would stay with him forever. The music had spoken when words could not. And for the first time, the silence that followed did not feel empty. It felt full of possibility. After stepping away from the stage, he stood near the back of the room, trying to steady his breathing. His hands still felt warm, like the music was lingering in his fingers. The noise around him returned slowly, voices overlapping, chairs moving, laughter rising again. Life continued, but he felt like he was walking through it differently now. For a moment, he wondered if what just happened would fade as quickly as it arrived. He had felt strong emotions before, only to watch them disappear when reality settled back in. He reminded himself not to expect too much. Expectations had hurt him in the past. Someone approached him quietly and said they enjoyed the performance. The words were simple, not dramatic, but they landed deeply. He thanked them, slightly surprised by how natural it felt to speak without lowering his eyes. Soon, another person nodded at him in passing. Then another. Small gestures, but each one felt like confirmation that the moment had been real. He found a seat and watched the rest of the performances. Normally, he would have compared himself or judged his own effort. This time, he listened with openness. He understood the courage it took to stand up there. The fear, the hope, the waiting. He felt connected to everyone who stepped on that stage. As time passed, a quiet confidence settled in him. Not the loud kind that demands attention, but a calm understanding of his own worth. He realized he didn't need everyone to like his music. He only needed to be honest with it. When the event ended, people began packing up. Some hurried away. Others stayed to talk. He stood slowly, unsure whether to leave or wait. Part of him felt that something else might happen. Another part told him not to imagine things. As he reached for his instrument, someone stopped him. They spoke carefully, asking where he had learned to play like that. He answered honestly, no formal training, just years of practice and listening. The response was not surprise, but interest. They talked briefly. Nothing big was promised. No dramatic offers were made. But there was curiosity, and curiosity felt like an open door. He was told to stay in touch, to keep playing, to not disappear. Walking home later, the city lights looked brighter. The streets felt less heavy. His life hadn't changed yet, but his view of it had. For once, he wasn't thinking about what he lacked. He was thinking about what he carried. At home, he placed his instrument gently in its usual place. He didn't play that night. He didn't need to. The music was already inside him, steady and calm. The following days brought small changes. He walked with more awareness. He listened more closely to sounds around him. Music seemed to appear everywhere, in passing cars, in distant voices, in footsteps on the pavement. He continued working his job, but it no longer felt like the only thing defining him. It was just one part of his life now, not the whole story. When days felt tiring, he reminded himself of the room, the silence, the applause that followed. He practiced differently too. Not harder, but deeper. He focused on feeling rather than perfection. Each session felt meaningful, like preparation for something unseen. A message arrived one evening, simple and brief. Someone from the event asked if he would be interested in playing again, this time for a slightly larger group. He read the message more than once, making sure it was real. There was fear again, but it felt different now. It didn't try to stop him. It reminded him to stay grounded. He replied with honesty, saying yes without pretending confidence he didn't feel. Days turned into weeks. He played a few more times. Each performance felt less like a test and more like a conversation. People listened. Some stayed. Some moved on. And that was okay. He learned that not every opportunity had to change everything. Some were meant to teach patience. Some were meant to build trust. And some were simply reminders that he was on the right path. There were still hard days. Moments of doubt didn't disappear completely. But now they didn't control him. When doubt arrived, he remembered how it felt to be heard. One evening, after another small performance, he sat alone for a while. He thought about how close he had been to never asking for that chance. How easily his life could have stayed quiet. He understood now that music hadn't changed everything all at once. It changed him first. It changed how he saw himself. And that change slowly shaped everything else. As he packed up to leave, he felt gratitude. Not for success, not for recognition, but for courage. The courage to speak when silence felt safer. He didn't know where this road would lead, but he knew he would keep walking it. The opportunity he once asked for had opened something inside him that could not be closed again. And with each step forward, the music continued to guide him, steady and honest, toward whatever came next. The invitation arrived on an ordinary afternoon, the kind that usually passed without meaning. He read the message slowly, not because it was long, but because it felt important. Someone had shared his performance with others. A small gathering wanted him to play. Nothing grand, nothing guaranteed, just another chance. He sat quietly for a while, letting the moment settle. This time, excitement did not rush in. Neither did fear. There was a steady calm instead, like a deep breath that finally reached his chest. He understood now that moments like this were not miracles. They were steps. Preparation felt different again. He still practiced, but without the pressure of proving himself. He focused on clarity, on telling a story through sound. He wanted the music to feel like a conversation, not a performance. The more he played, the more natural it felt. The day of the gathering arrived without drama. He traveled lightly, carrying only what he needed. When he entered the space, he noticed familiar signs of uncertainty in other performers. The nervous smiles, the quiet pacing. He felt compassion instead of comparison. When it was his turn, he stepped forward without rushing. The room was smaller than the first event, but the attention felt closer. People were there to listen, not to judge. He began gently, letting the sound settle before building. Something unexpected happened. He enjoyed himself, not in a loud way but in a peaceful one. He felt present in every note. The music flowed without effort, shaped by everything he had lived through. When he finished, the response was warm and honest. Afterward, conversations followed naturally. People asked about his music, his journey, his plans. He answered truthfully without trying to impress. For the first time, he felt comfortable being seen as a musician, not just someone who played music. Over time, these moments added up. Small events led to slightly bigger ones. Introductions turned into connections. Nothing moved fast, but it moved forward. Each step built on the last. He still worked his regular job. Life didn't suddenly become easy, but his days felt fuller now. Even difficult moments carried purpose. Music was no longer hidden. It lived alongside everything else. There were setbacks too. Opportunities that didn't return. Messages that went unanswered. Days when doubt resurfaced. But now doubt felt familiar, not powerful. He knew how to keep going. One evening, after another performance, someone approached him with an offer to collaborate. It wasn't about money or fame. It was about creating something together. He accepted without hesitation. Working with others taught him new lessons. Listening became as important as playing. He learned how different stories could meet through sound. Music became a shared space instead of a private one. Slowly, people began recognizing him. Not widely, not suddenly, but genuinely. He wasn't introduced as a hidden talent anymore. He was simply someone who made meaningful music. He thought often about the day he asked for that single opportunity. How close he came to walking away. How easily fear could have kept his life unchanged. That memory kept him grounded. One quiet night, he sat alone with his instrument, just as he used to. The room was the same. The walls were the same. But he was not. The music he played now carried peace instead of longing. He realized that success had arrived quietly. Not as applause or attention, but as belonging. He belonged in his own life now. He trusted his voice. Looking ahead, he didn't make big promises to himself. He didn't plan far into the future. He knew the road would keep changing. What mattered was that he would keep walking it. Music had not erased his struggles. It had given them meaning. It had turned waiting into movement, silence into sound. And all of it began with one simple request. One honest moment of courage. One opportunity. The world did not change overnight. But his place in it did. And that made all the difference.